first of all, I just want to say hello and welcome again to the Careers Day session. It's good to have those schools attending with us today. Before we get started, I just wanted to begin with an acknowledgement to country. So I would like to acknowledge that I'm recording this meeting from the land of the Wurundjeri people and pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the various lands in which we meet today. In the spirit of reconciliation, Waka acknowledges the traditional custodians and elders past, present and future of Australia upon which our festivals take place and their connection to land, sea and community. We extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. Now, with that, I will get straight into it. Now, the way this works is that I'm the moderator for this session. So schools, if you have any questions that you would like to ask our guest speakers today, can you please send me a private message in the chat, unless, of course, you feel comfortable in sharing it publicly in the chat box. And I will save that question maybe for the end of the conversations that we have with our guest speakers, or I may ask it during certain moments as this session goes along. So if you do have any questions that you're dying to ask our guest speakers, please go ahead and chuck that into the chat box. But other than that, I would like to introduce to you all the Festival Director of Waka, Adam Loxley, who would like to say a few words before we officially begin this session. Adam is the co-founder of Waka, which is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. Take it away, Adam.
Thank you, Tony. Yes, 30 years. So you'll have to excuse me. I've got a bit of a cold today. But I want to say a big thank you to all the schools for participating today and being part of Waka this year. It is our 30th birthday, and it's our 30th birthday after 2 hard years of COVID restrictions and shows being cancelled. And so it's really good to be back this year and have a normal year. And we really appreciate all the schools that are participating this year, because we know that it's been a difficult last couple of years, and even this year is hard. So I can't wait to see what you guys produce this year. But to Careers Day now, so the aim of Careers Day is, or for our Waka Careers Day, is to introduce you to some industry professionals and listen to their stories about where they started, what were some of the issues that they had when they were starting their careers in the performing arts industry, and what they think it takes to succeed. We've been doing this Careers Day for many years now, and I love hearing these stories. Everyone's got a different story to tell. They're always really interesting. So I think, you'll really love it today. It's always great. So let's get straight into it. I'm going to introduce our 2 industry professionals. They're both accomplished stage and screen performers. First of all, we have Rachael. Hi, Rachael. Rachael, yes, stage and screen performer, worked with the ABC. I'm going to go through their bios really quickly, because as they tell their stories, we'll hear more about what they've done. But yeah, worked with the ABC, Baz Luhrmann, Opera Australia, toured London. Most recently, had a start in The Producers up in the Brisbane powerhouse. And Rachael, you've been with Waka for a couple of years now, working as a host and on our panel as well.
Yeah, well, I hosted last year with James, which was super beautiful because we actually did The Producers together. So that's
right. Yes.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Yeah.
Yes. And also we have James Lee. James is, you could almost say, he's Australian musical theatre royalty these days.
Senior citizen, I'd say, probably.
So James is a musical theatre and cabaret performer, and massive list of credits, but the director and designer, 32 years in the industry. I think, was it last year or the year before, you were in My Fair Lady, directed by Julie Andrews, or Dame Julie Andrews, I should say. And and at the beginning, like I don't know if I was going to say a long time ago, I shouldn't say that, but you're also in the original production of Les Miserables.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, so that's, I think they just bookend a very long and accomplished career, which I'm sure we're all going to hear about as we move on. So, like I said before, the whole idea of this is to hear your stories, so I think I'm going to start by asking the first question is, where did your career start? How did you, where were you, when you left school, where were you? How did you point yourself in the right direction? James or Rachel, I don't mind. Who wants to go first?
Ladies first. Rachel, you go first.
Sure. So for me, how did I begin? I suppose I was fortunate in the sense that my mum could see I wanted to dance and put me in dance class when I was a tiny tot. And then that led to singing and acting when I was like 5 and 6. And I just continued training. And so when I did a bit of full-time ballet, like I was pretty hardcore into it, but I still kept up my studies because that was really important to me. I wanted to be a performer with a good head on their shoulders. And so when it got to that age, in Queensland we graduated around 17, I really wanted to get into university to really solidify all my training, but just on a whim really, because everyone else around my age was auditioning. I was 2 weeks into being 18 and I was like, well, I want to audition for a job. Like, why not? Although I really wanted to go into uni. And I got into uni at that time to study musical theatre. And I got it. Out of everyone, I was the one that booked it, and I kind of fell over backwards and went, oh, well, universe, I suppose this is my path. So I then started literally when I was 18, and I always intended to go back and study, but I suppose, gosh, maybe 11 years later, I'm still working gratefully, and I've continued, nationally and internationally doing musical theatre, and now branched into film and TV. So that's really how I started and pursued that. So just a lot of private tuition on my end, and people that have graciously come into my life and given me the training and tools I've needed at that point in time to continue on.
And how about you, James?
Yes. Well, I was actually a similar thing. I was at school ballet because I wasn't. I wanted to do musical theatre, but I never thought I could do it because I thought you needed singing, dancing, and acting, singing, acting, and dancing. And I was strong in singing and acting, and done every school show and many things, touring and school projects. Hang on, I've lost you. But I would do my last 2 years of schooling in England, and I saw Les Mis at the Barbican before it even transferred to the West End, and had an epiphany because it was that thing of, oh my gosh, there's shows out there. And of course, these are the days before YouTube and everything where you could just watch everything visually. It was sitting there watching it going, I can do this. This is a singing acting show. There's a tiny bit of dancing. So I came back to Australia. I rang Cameron McIntosh very... not through an agent. I didn't have an agent or anything like that. I just rang Cameron McIntosh, the office, and said, when's the next casting? Because they were starting rehearsals the following week. And they said, actually, there are auditions tomorrow. Come on in. Sang for the assistant director in Sydney, flew down to Melbourne to sing for Trevor Nunn, who was the original director. And out of that year, my best friend got into it. And then I got into it. I came into the show a year down once they did the first cast changeover. But I was the same as Rachel. I had the intention of going to university, and I strongly support it these days, absolutely these days. But for me, it was a thing that the shows just kept on coming. It was a lucky time with Cameron McIntosh shows, with Your Phantom and Your Miss Saigon, which I did both. I just sort of, and a lot of the people, senior people in the industry said, don't go to a 3-year course because you've learned on the job. I mean, you've had the best, I suppose, an apprenticeship that was invaluable. So 33 years later, I'm still going.
That's wonderful to hear that both of you have actually kind of gone down the journey of sort of workplace training as opposed to full-time study. I'm really curious to know, what did you do to, I guess, perfect your craft in terms of the training avenue? What did you do to ensure that when you were working that you were keeping your skill sets up to scratch for industry standards? I'll start with James.
Singing lessons, of course. Singing lessons go up to grade 8. I was sort of at that point more thinking opera. I went to a all-boys school, and it was sort of encouraged. You know, they were saying you've got a very good opera voice, and I found opera a bit. I love it, but I didn't want a career in it. I love the musical theatre aspect. So I did that, and also it was just school productions. I mean, and college productions as well. The school I did in England, I mean, we did 18 productions in 2 years. So it was more like a university than, you know, just doing your annual production. So it was, but it was, I sort of, learned on the job. And then, of course, once you get into the show, I mean, I was lucky enough to have Anthony Warlow as a singing teacher. So it was sort of, it was, you know, things like that just, I suppose, gave me that encouragement. And with him saying, you've got a voice, we need to work on this. And yeah, so that was sort of my training.
And Rachel?
Yeah, so for me, because I didn't go to uni, I remember thinking, oh, I really got to keep up my training. So for me, I was lucky I had a lot of dancing under my belt. So I feel like I could sustain and just with all my training and knowledge. But I know for me, singing and acting, I really wanted to keep up. So that's why I went to London. I was actually in America at the time, and I was meant to come back to Australia in like literally a week. And I was like, I don't want to go home. So I just diverted my flight to London instead with literally like not clothes for London, let me admit. And I rocked up and I through a recommendation again, just a meeting people. I think things are really meant to be. I went and studied and developed beautiful relationships over there and really honed on my singing and acting, but it was all through private tuition because for me, as I said, it's really finding the person who gets you.
Correct. That's absolutely yes.
As opposed to, for me, an institution at the time, I'm already so disciplined. I didn't need someone telling me how to do that. So that's what I did. And then, like, if I can talk, gosh, that's years ago, but if I can talk like now, like for instance, I had a break. I'm in a show right now and we had a 6-week break. And so I decided to do a film and TV acting course on Zoom, you know, with a teacher in the States. So I think for me, what's really helped is I just tune into myself, what I need at the time, and go, what skills do I want to develop? Where am I lacking? You know, what am I wanting right now? Also too, because your priorities shift as a performer and as a human. So right now I'm loving acting. So that's what I went and did. So yeah, I think that's how I've kept it up. It's been very organic in that sense, but always training, because you have to keep on form, because you never really know what's coming up, and you have to keep in the times and things like that too, unless they do.
I think it's also that thing of, sorry, can I just say, you know, you could be in the greatest show in the world. That show finishes, you go back into the audition pool. That is look, you know, yes, you've got a resume that sort of says he's done things, so we know he can do, but it's still that, you know, once again, the pool just opens up and you just got to say, I'm the best for this role or this show. So it's that proving sort of over and over again, which is sort of like an interview, but it's a bit sort of like going snakes and ladders. It's a bit saying, you know, you could be in the thing that you think, I'm going to do this forever. And of course, it closes 6 weeks later. And then you sort of, you know, go back into the large pool again, which has certainly grown since I mean, WAPA was the only musical theatre course. VCA was about to start when I was in the industry. So I worked with the people who did the original year of WAPA. So, and I think there's like 32 courses now in Australia. It's a lot of courses to choose from. We'll get to that later though.
Right.
I would like to actually I just want to remind all the students, if you have any questions, please chuck them into the chat room, and Tane will definitely ask them. I just want to ask, so you both sort of described that you had a lucky break, and then that sort of kickstarted your career. But could you talk a little bit about how you, because luck doesn't, people have always had lucky breaks, but there's always a lot of work behind those lucky breaks. And could you talk a little bit about, you know, how you kept, you know, motivated to, you know, how did you make those breaks happen, and how did you keep yourself motivated while you were waiting for that lucky break to come along?
Rach?
Yeah, look, I think I don't believe in luck. that's just not who I am. I believe in, I'm going to hang on with this quote, but when your preparation meets the opportunity, that's what I believe in. And so for me, as I said, I'm a very hardworking person. So I didn't need to work on my motivation in reaching my goals. I've always been very hungry and driven. But when I have lost motivation is when maybe there's been a lull, or like the pandemic. Like, I know a lot of people left the industry, but me, I instead decided to diversify. I decided to look beyond it and find motivation. Okay, so I can't do my musical 8 times a week because there's no theatre open. So what can I do? So I decided to diversify, and that's where I found my motivation. And I think when times get tough like that, for me, I just tune into myself and go, well, is this still what I want? I think there's a greater purpose. For me, I'm doing art in this world because it's what I feel. It's how I feel like I can communicate and help people. So I feel like I need to do it. So that's for me. I look at the greater reason. That's my motivation, and I think that should be the motivation. If your motivation is to get fame or money or validation or something, or a credit on a piece of paper, in this industry it means nothing. Right? It's the wrong reason. So it's looking beyond it. For me, that's what's kept me going, and that's what's gotten me through those hard times. But it's definitely about the preparation. Like, I'll give you an example. Most recently, I'm in a show and I got thrown on mid-show for a role I'd never done before. And I don't say this often about myself, but I did a very good job. And so, but that only happened because I'd put in the hard yards.
Yeah.
So it's not just going to happen, or it might just happen, but then if you don't have the reputation and credits to back you up, you're not going to sustain that as a career.
I would say,
yeah.
Sorry, I would say it's definitely, like, luck has got nothing to do with it. I can't believe, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing how blotchy I am on the screen. Very embarrassing. But it's the luck, but I think it's got something to do with, I mean, I was really lucky in this sense. So I started my career right at Cameron Mackintosh. Cats had happened, but Les Mis was coming up, Phantom, Miss Saigon. And I was lucky, not lucky, but I was at the right place at the right time to join work with Cameron Mackintosh as a producer. I don't know if I probably would have gone to a school if that decade hadn't happened. I mean, I was really lucky in the sense that sort of almost took up an entire decade. But I also saw the 9-to-5ers when we were going to, once we were heading to work, they were leaving. And I looked across at this group and I went, I don't want to be them ever. I really don't want to be them ever. And I could also see that this industry was not always going to necessarily be as flourishing as it was when I first started. So I taught myself graphic design, graphic design and video editing and all that sort of stuff that I knew I could do when times were a little bit tougher. And it's helped me, exponentially throughout my career to just have those things in my pocket. But yeah, no, I totally agree. I think schools certainly do open doors, but also, the courses that are out there, I would honestly say there's only about 4 of them that are worth really looking at. I find a lot of the schools are schools that people take their money in. They still get 3 years of training, but it's not, I don't think it really trains them for an industry that they're going into. Maybe 4 or 5 it should be, but it's certainly, there's a lot out there. It's certainly worth asking someone in the industry if it's, if this school is good, because, we certainly have, we know when people come from certain schools that you go, yeah, definitely. So it's that, but I probably would have gone to school if I hadn't had the Cam Mac years.
I'm so curious to know, because you're obviously both so trained and well versed in performing arts skills. What other skills have come into play outside of your performing arts, singing, dancing, acting skills, have come into your career, into your jobs?
You want me, right? So you go, darling.
Yeah. So obviously, I have done a lot of this career, but in terms of the diversification, I love mentoring, and I've been doing a lot of mentoring and teaching because because I just love it. So that's a big part of it. I'd actually love to develop a performing arts program mentoring thing for people that, yeah, like only because of all the things that you learn in the industry that you're not taught, or you can't be taught unless you're on the job. So it's a vision of mine. So I really love to do that. It's kind of in the same ballpark, but I love to do jazz gigs. I love jazz singing because it's so free. Musical theatre and ballet and all these it's very structured, and so jazz for me is so freeing and beautiful. So I love to do a gig now and then. Yeah, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. I think that's just what's presently happening in my life because I'm in a show as well, so I'm a bit consumed by that. But yeah, there's a couple of things that I do, and I love other things. Yeah, I'll pass.
I think. Thank you, Danny. I think I was. If you look at photos of me, I was a very confident young child, determined that I was going to make it to the stage. But my thing was, I did big shows for a long time, so I was taught all that. Then I started doing corporate acts, like the Three Waiters, which is an act that 2 Australians started, and now is been done in 74 countries, 13,000 performances. Not always us. There's lots of teams, but it's funny. People say to us, "How do you perform in front of 2,000 people every night?" And to be honest, they're in the dark. You can hear them, but it's not like you're visually looking at them. Whereas I think my training for sort of feeling incredibly confident in front of a small group or a ballroom for 2,000 people was walking amongst them and performing amongst them and having that confidence that you feel like you could do anything or walk on anywhere. And I always say, a lot of people who are not actors say, "Oh gosh, I could never do that acting." And then you look at their jobs and you think, you stand up in front of a group of 50 people every day and talk to them in a way that is sort of like an acting, it's not maybe playing a character, but it's still putting on a show for people to teach them, the necessary skills from whatever's coming from that course. And I sort of say, everyone has a little bit of acting in them. I mean, lawyers are people who just don't want to do acting. They go and become lawyers. But yeah, that's sort of does that make sense? Yeah, I think so.
No, it absolutely does. And I think, what you've touched on there is that some of the skills that are within the performing arts are transferable to other areas in your life.
Very much so. Yeah.
So that is what you can gain from that, especially if you're sort of, I guess, first establishing yourself in learning this craft, is that it will translate over to other skill sets. So that's great to hear. Go ahead, Rachel.
I'll say something on that. I think it's if you're open to seeing things and if you're not tunnel visioned, it's amazing what you can learn in an acting environment and being an actor. Like, I love psychology. I think the way people tick, it's fascinating. And it's because I do study as an actor, but people's lives and their beings in this industry are like this, typically, not very flatline, because we have to access all these emotions. So this industry is so informative, and these opportunities are great because you can find yourself accessing all these different places, and it's very exciting. And not only do you grow as a performer, you grow as a person, and you become much more worldly, and you get to know yourself better and other people, and you get to understand people better. And I think it's fascinating, and acting, I think, is just good for anyone to understand humanity. So that's what I'd say on that.
Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, it is, there's a famous scene in Fame, the movie, where the teacher gives them that exercise of it's an ordinary exercise that you do every day, cleaning your teeth, eating food. And there's a wonderful scene where, each actor sort of looking at this fork and there's the parents around them looking like, what strange things are they doing? But it's that thing, it relates to people as well. You get to know people, and you sort of, if you come to a character 10 years later, you might go, you know what, I remember that guy I worked with 10 years ago who had a slight sort of lisp or a thing like that, and I'll incorporate that into the character. It's not him on stage, but you take snippets from all those people you've met and been taught by that make you the sum of all parts, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Life informs art.
James, Rachel, what would you say to somebody, to the students here who are looking at what you're saying and thinking to themselves, like, the only way to make it in this career is to be famous and the best. Are there other ways to make it in this career, in this industry, If you're not, the most amazing singer or dancer, like, is there other ways to be part of the industry?
I
Yeah.
don't think you need to be. I think it's better if you're not perfect at everything. I
Yeah,
know
totally.
that maybe sounds crazy, but if I'm honest, I can speak on behalf of myself. Yes, I've got a lot of things going for me and I have natural talent. But at the same time, I am not perfect. I have many flaws, but they've become the things that are interesting about me.
Correct. Yeah.
Right, and they give me a point of difference, and people go, "Oh, the way you did that," or gosh, in ballet training, it's you know, but they've given me that edge to. I think if I had it all easy to me, I wouldn't have achieved what I've achieved because it's given me the motivation to push past that person who had the feet like that or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and it gives you a point of difference. I personally don't love performers on stage who are just perfect. They're one dimensional, but the people that have worked for certain things that have
But is it possible?
make it a part of you. Make it like if you find a niche in the market that suits you.
Right. Yeah.
Don't just look at maybe aspire to careers of other people, but find what you're good at, what your niche is, where you can make an impact in the industry. It's going to be different for everyone.
So you can still have a career without ever getting a lead role. Like, is it possible to have a great career without,
Some people don't
being
aspire
being
to that.
front and center?
Some people
I
don't
suppose
want
if
to
you
be
look
front and center. Like,
if you look at it like Hollywood, there are the top 1% of whatever it is that we all know, The Rock and all the fame, very, very well-known actors. There's a whole lot of actors that are working constantly that don't necessarily come into our space. But it's the same with musicals. I remember John O'May is a fantastic performer, played one of the managers in Phantom, and he came from America, and he said, it's fascinating in this country, everyone wants to play a lead role, whereas the industry, shows are made up of so many different characters. Swings are an amazing thing. Swings are people that understudy the ensemble, and they have to learn 12 different tracks so they're going on at a moment's notice or a day's notice or a week's notice to do a track that they have to know 12 of them. And you're thinking about that with dance and costume changes and everything like that. So, they're in our world, they're our stars because they're people that save the show. To be famous is, and I think also these days with social media and everything, I think fame is, you've got to be so careful because, what can come out and kill your career in a second, which was nothing. But, it could slightly, you wake up one morning and go, what happened? What happened? Type sort of thing. So it's I think it's to be working. I always say to people, they say, oh, have you done any television or film? I said, a little bit of film, but I said, look, I'm working in an industry that I work with all these people. So look, if something happens, I think of myself like the grandmother in Titanic, who, she'd been an actress all her life. All her life she'd been an actress and had wonderful things, little successful things in small playhouses in America. But on her last, she died 10 years after, I think 5 years after Titanic. And she said, I've had the best time because I wasn't a star from the beginning and then had to keep up that pressure of I need to maintain and be a star. I've worked in this industry with all these wonderful people, but I'm, now reaping the rewards of going to every award show, every premiere around the world. And she passed away 5 years after that. And I thought, what a fantastic, and I sort of think, I'd love to do that. I'd really love to be, not that if a role comes along earlier, I am going to take it. Yeah.
I've actually got a question that kind of extends upon that conversation from one of our schools. Who obviously both of you have experienced working with an array of different kinds of people, both as artists, but also the behind the scenes people that operate in shows such as theatre technicians, backstage crew, lighting designers, costume designers, all of those sort of elements that are related to the production of either a show or a film or television. Can you give us a little bit of insight, any ideas and tips about students that might be interested in going down that path?
Yeah, can I start with that one, Rach?
Okay. Yep.
There's so many roles, there's so many positions you can have. I mean, this is the beautiful thing about musicals, is that magic happens and the audience doesn't realize that there's actually 70 people making the show happen backstage, you know, from dressers to flymen to ushers that let people in and everything like that. So I love the fact that it's sort of a mystery in the background that people don't know about, but we know in the industry, you need those people to put on a show. We can't just actually do it ourselves. And but for going into those things, absolutely. I mean, I think you know, working in sort of not amateur theatre, but a community theatre and things like that, can give you that sort of you know, these days they're operating with $1 million pieces of equipment, you know, like unlike the old days where they had sort of one lighting board. That so if you can train, you know, you can train on that, or there's some fantastic TAFE courses. NIDA does some fantastic technical courses as well. I think VCA does as well for the backstage. But absolutely, I mean, this is the thing about what happened during COVID with Broadway was that people said, "Oh, those poor actors," and everyone said, "Yeah, but what about everyone else that, you know, the dry cleaners next door to the theatre that literally dry cleans only just show costumes, so they, you know, gone for 2 years. The restaurant next door that served the customers that was coming to see the, you know, the audience that was coming to see the show. It's theatre is not just acting. Yes, we're in the forefront. Yes, we are seen, but we know it takes an army to put us on stage.
Certainly does. Rachel?
I don't think I need to say much more on that, and I'm not going to profess my knowledge because I've never worked backstage, but I've certainly, yes, been a part of it, and we certainly know who is a valued asset backstage. Look,
can I tell a funny story? What I love about backstage is that even though we're, you know, there's mechs and techs and dressers and actors and, you know, we're sort of a real cross section of people. It's like we all know and understand each other working backstage. Quick changes are happening in, you know, areas where men are going to probably, you know, only see, they won't look at it, but it's that thing of something has to happen that can't be curtained or whatever. But the moment someone works backstage that's not to do with the company, we're like cats. It's that thing where suddenly we're going, you know, you don't belong to this, even though we work with a whole different, you know, spectrum of people. It's fascinating. As soon as someone walks backstage, it's not part of the team. You can instantly know everyone just goes, no, not part of our. So it's a very, very special place backstage.
Are you saying that basically that if anyone was interested in, you know, going down the road of becoming a tech person for these kinds of projects or as a career, that either working in a setting that like a community theatre or studying are the two options that they can explore to maybe find that path?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, sorry, Jane, can I, you're right if I answer that? It's, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, these days that every suburb, quite a lot of suburbs have amazing venues that are connected opposite to the council chambers and things like that. And they have extraordinary equipment. And it's usually run by someone who's been in the industry, who then sort of wants to, you know, maybe having a child or something like that, and they're sort of pulling back a bit. So they'll go into you know, they'll be the head technical person, but they're honoured and love people that want to come in and just, I'm ready and willing to learn. And I think that's the amazing thing, is that they love that fact that they can then become mentors to, I keep on fading, don't I? You know, they will teach the next generation that, you know, maybe does 2 or 3 things with the community theatre, but then it's like a little sort of little world that you'll hear things within from when you're working in the community theatre, that, you know, they're looking for people for a touring production of Phantom of the Opera. They're looking for, and most people do have. Most people, you'll have, you know, your head mechs or your head technicians or whatever are people who've worked in the industry, but quite often it's a personality thing as well. If they're going to work well with a team, because technical people, when you're touring with a show, they get bored during the show because it's just the same thing every night, whereas they love a bump out and a bump in where they have to take the whole set down and put the whole set up in another state. And you can see them every time we're finishing a season. It's like they're getting excited by this. Here we go, because they're going to do it all in 2 days, 2.5 days. So, yeah.
I'll just quickly say, because I feel like this has definitely been answered, this question, but I think that there's a lot of opportunity at this time, because during COVID, essentially, I know rules are constantly changing when this video is put up. Who knows if it'll be the same? But, you know, for instance, if you get COVID, 7 days are out. And obviously on stage, we have covers because we're cast and we are seen. But backstage, I don't want to say anything out of turn here, but there's definitely circumstances where the backstage people aren't covered. so then the show can suffer. So I definitely think during this time it would be a great opportunity for people to, I don't know, I don't know the industry, but obviously school would teach you this, but rock up to a theatre, see if there's positions available as dressers, as lighting technicians, as sound techs, like, because as mechanists, because I know firsthand that people are less covered backstage in these
And a
times
lot of people
when
left
you
the
just have to
industry as
be-
well.
when you just have to be, isolated. So I think that I think it's actually a wonderful time to reach out in opportunities like this.
Sorry, I was just saying I think it's also, we had that thing of a lot of people left the industry, because as it is sort of a slightly not structured thing of, you never know where your next show's coming from. These people just, after 2 years of no work, just said, I think I need to go and get a 9 to 5 job. I need to, they've got kids, they've got mortgages, they've got all those things. And, theatre had certainly served that purpose. So I think it's a good time to be coming into the industry, because there's a lot of people who, it was their regular work and now not doing it anymore. So it's a good time to sort of leap into it.
Right.
Yeah. I just want to back up what James and Rachel said as well. I remember early in my career working, especially in amateur theatre, you meet a lot of people who are working professionally, who come and do amateur theatre, and you learn a lot from them on those sort of shows, and you make great connections as well. And a lot of breaks that people get are often through that amateur theatre community. So yeah, it's
Very
definitely,
much so.
yeah. And look, I think that is a nice sort of lead into, so students that are working on Wakakiri, on their Wakakiri performance at the moment, Wakakiri is a great opportunity to, it's like creating a 7-minute mini musical on stage. There's so many elements to it. How do you think these students should be using Wakakiri as a way of, learning about the career, about the industry?
Do you want to do that, Rach?
Yeah,
We've lost his sound waves, don't
Again, Rachel, that cut out for a second.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry.
I've got church bells near me, so
The
I
bells.
wonder if they took the center stage. So basically what I was saying was, it's a great opportunity because in a non-professional setting, and so without the pressure of being paid, to produce work, you can work with stage management, you can work with the backstage crew, you can work with spotlights in your face, you can work with fears, with nerves that are surfacing as you perform. So you're essentially getting such an experience that when you actually do get to be at an amateur performance or a professional performance, you actually get the experience firsthand without having the pressure of performing to a paying audience or whatever that is. So I think it's a great opportunity to be crafting your skills and experimenting and kind of using your skills, branching out ideas. I think it's a very creative experience and something that will serve you, because I know for me, having to learn firsthand on the job, I didn't know, 5-minute call, what I needed to do at those certain moments. But in this experience, you can kind of get that knowledge under your belt now at this age, which is a really beautiful thing, so you can be prepped for the future.
I think you can do a lot at your school, and you can rehearse and do all those things. But it's that realization of when you go and work or meet other schools at the Wakakiri days, is that you see other schools, how they work and operate, and it becomes much a bigger. We always talk about the bigger picture. You're sort of. I always talk about being a brushstroke within a painting, but with Wakakiri, you can pull back a little bit and see another part of the painting as well, sort of how it's structured, how it works. So yeah, absolutely. I think especially the Wakakiri days. I mean, you can see the kids. They're confident because they've come from a school that they've been told they're great. But suddenly, they can walk in. There's 7 other schools, and they're terrified because it's that thing of, even though they know they're good, but they suddenly they're seeing things saying, "Oh, maybe never question what you're doing. Never question what you're doing" is one of those things you say. But it is a thing where you're suddenly put on a bigger stage. And I suppose auditions are like that for professional theatre, because you suddenly see the competition you're up against, and all those things. I mean, at 53, it's fun to be this is one of the senior citizens in shows these days. I don't feel like a senior citizen, but
Don't look it.
thank you.
You're welcome.
I would also say, for anyone who's thinking about, who likes the backstage or directing, set making, props, costumes, all that sort of stuff. Wakakiri is an opportunity to be in charge of doing that, especially directing and choreographing. To get that opportunity further down the line, that they're the really rare opportunities that you get. So to have that opportunity now, so I would say seize it with both hands and embrace
Absolutely.
it and put it on your resume, because it is you at the end of the day, you're whatever you create, you're putting on a professional stage, under professional conditions. Everything's there that you will find in a professional show is on stage at Wakakiri, and they're all available to you. So I would say embrace it and whack it on your resume.
It's like Alice through the looking glass. It's that thing if you want to go step through it, but you're a bit hesitant and you're a bit sort of like, oh, I don't know what's beyond that. And I think you see the people that do make it in the industry, the ones that go, I'm going through that mirror and I'm going to see what's on the other side. Because it is a magical place. It really is. I mean, I remember talking to Mum when I first started. I just went, it's amazing. Backstage is more choreographed than it is on stage because, you've got an acting company of 30 that all have to change costume at the same time while the set's being changed. So there's duck 2, 3, 4, run to get the costume, and it's we call it the well-oiled machine that you have to sort of be part of. But I love it. I just love it. And as soon as you get into it, it's a rewarding thing. Some people do one show and then they go, you know what? It's not for me. Not for me. I didn't want to do that. But at least they've tried. I think the people that sort of say, oh, I can't do shows because I'm not that talented, I just think, come on, give it a chance. Give it a whirl, unless you're tone deaf.
And extending
on that a little bit, can we talk maybe a little bit more about the aspects of the industry, particularly when it comes to rejection, and what strategies both of you have employed to handle rejection in such a competitive environment, it is a competitive environment. So how do you manage that? Because that is part of being in this industry. Rachel,
Sure. Look, rejection's not nice. I mean, we're not going to put a soft blanket over that, but I think it's healthy. Just like I think competition is healthy. What I was saying before, I think if everything just came to you on a silver platter, I don't think you'd learn and grow. And also too, I don't think that you then, when you get an opportunity, I don't think you'd appreciate it. So maybe that's a tough love approach, but I think it's healthy. And I think Wakakiri can definitely show you that competition too. And I know that's not the point of it, but it can, when you feel those things, you can learn to navigate them within yourself, is what I'm saying, and treat it positively. Look, coping mechanisms for me, again, like obviously I've gone for things and not gone for them, and it's disappointing and it's soul crushing, particularly if feels like you've sacrificed your life and soul. Because a lot of this industry is I don't want to use the word sacrifice, but you're giving up a lot of maybe social time, or, your schedule is not in normal people hours, and people, but you understand what I'm trying to say.
Lifestyle.
And so there is a yes, lifestyle choices are very different. So there is a lot of things that you need to factor in this career if it's going to be for you, and if it's worth it. And when you do feel like this is it, this is me, this is what it is, and then it doesn't go your way, jealousy pops up and frustration and throwing in the towel, all those things will come up. But again, it then comes down to knowing yourself and going, well, where are my priorities lying? Do I believe there's something bigger and better out there for me? Because there's a beautiful quote that my friend shared with me on a show, and she said, what's yours won't pass you by. And I'm a believer in that. If you do keep putting in the hard yards, though, it's not just going to come for you if you don't keep working. But I'd say let it motivate you to push yourself harder. If you got down to the final maybe 2 and you didn't get it, well, think, okay, let's celebrate the fact that I got into the final 2. And then second of all, what can I do? What do I think? Maybe ask for feedback. You don't usually get it, let's be real. Maybe if you're a lucky one, you could go, what was it? Maybe it was my vocals. Maybe I do need to work on my mix belt. Maybe I need to, work on something to make it work for you, not against you, because if you get stuck in the negativity of it, well,
Yes, absolutely. I think
so
it's the thing that it's sometimes better to be cut in the first round rather than going through 8 rounds and then getting down to the last 2. I often feel like, yeah, good, I don't need to think about it all or anything like that. But you've also got to remember, as I say, pulling back and seeing the bigger picture, you may have seen the show and go, I am perfect for that role on stage. But from an artistic point of view, from a creative point of view, they're looking at that particular plot may cover an old man, may cover a young boy, may also do. So you've got to, they are looking at not just you and what you do, and you say, I did everything that role does in my audition. You're going, yeah, but they're actually looking at you as a lead role understudy. So you've got to realize that it's not necessarily what you're doing on stage in the audition that they see you as extra things, which for shows, because every lead role has 3 covers in a show. So that's and if you've got an ensemble of 15, then you've got a lot of those people are covering 3 or 4 roles. There'll be a first cover, second cover, order of going on, but it's all those things you've got to factor in. That okay, maybe I was right for my ensemble part, but maybe I wasn't right for the young boy or the old man. It's just
But can I say a lot of my rejections and a lot of my failed auditions, like ones that I've come out of going, oh God, I hope sorry, I shouldn't have said that, but I hope nobody saw me, that was of great importance. I've learnt so much from them. I haven't learned really from my ones where I probably achieved a lot. It was the ones where I have failed that I've learnt so much, but I've made a conscious choice to make it push me in the right direction.
absolutely.
And that's a choice you can only make within yourself.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Yes. I mean, yeah, I totally agree. I think
And then if it's not for you, it's not for you as well. That's okay.
Yeah, that's right.
At least
That's
you
right.
tried.
And the thing is, you can do like 6 months of auditions, open a show that closes within 2 weeks. That's the other thing you've got to realize is that, it's not necessarily a job that you've got forever. It was meant to be a 10-week season, but unfortunately no one bought tickets. Nothing to do with you. And you may be out of work and, you may have the greatest plot in the show or whatever, but suddenly you're out of work in 2 weeks. It's a lovely industry.
But I think that the other thing I've noticed about really successful people is that they're always auditioning. They've always got something on the go, and they're always scouring, the papers looking for that next opportunity, even when they're, when they do have something, when they do have a job, they're always out there. I think that's the difference between ending up being, a barista for the rest of your life and actually having a career.
Well, also too, no one's going to do it for you. I think there's a lot of people out there that think, oh, it's all right. I've got an agent now. I've got a whatever it is. I've got a social media profile of however many followers. I don't even know all that jargon, but it's not going to come knocking.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm in a job, but no, you have to keep, you're the only one that's going to make it happen. You can't rely on anybody else. And you can't rely on maybe your skill set to follow you through for a grandiose career. You've got to keep going. But it's only got to, it's got to come from a place of wanting, though, and you genuinely wanting that. Otherwise, if you train from a place of just working yourself into the ground, well, that's not a beautiful lifestyle either. So you got to want to do it. But yeah, you've got to.
Can I tell you?
Got to hustle.
We did Crazy for You, the musical, when it first started in Australia. There was a round of auditions. Now, I don't tap. I've never tapped. I should have tapped. I should have learned to tap, but I don't tap. I didn't. 42nd Street, where 4 of us didn't tap in the show, I get auditions for every tapping musical because it's on my resume. But I always say I don't tap. I don't tap. This was the final week for the dancing, and I'd learned the routine that we were going to do. Absolutely, I knew it. And it was me, a singer, and then the rest were like the Tap Brothers, Hot Shoe Shuffle Boys, the Tap Dogs, all the sort of, the greatest tappers in the world. And, I just instantly going, don't look at them, don't look at them, don't, give yourself the confidence, this routine. Of course, what they did was do the routine once, and they went, now we're going to learn something new. And I went, and it's terrifying. They then, what they did was, what was amazing to watch was suddenly they said, thanks guys, that's all the dance we need. Now we're going to do the singing. And to watch grown men suddenly go, "Ugh, this is terrifying me," and I'm me going, "Ha ha! Here I am, rising out of the ashes," because that's my thing that I'm good at. And so it was amazing to watch these people who dance. Young dancers can be very confident, especially during that tap era that they were the talk of the town. It was extraordinary to see their knees buckle and suddenly go, "I can't do this. I can't do this." So, yeah.
And I think that's just on that. It's a good point. I had a funny tap. I do tap, but I have a story where I just had a diabolical audition. It was my first audition in Australia, and during my tap audition, my tap plate flung off and the screws went everywhere, and I just went into a bit of a panic. No one knew me. And so I had to run out of the room, get a screwdriver and screw my tap shoe. Then I came back in and they'd obviously learned the routine and I was in a bit of a state. And so I tried to learn, I was like, "Oh, I'll put myself up the back, I'll put myself up the back." But they'd obviously been eyeing me off the whole time because they wanted me for the show. And I got the show at the end and they said, "You come down front, do it." And I had to do it in front of everyone. And I was like, oh gosh. And for some reason, it was like the universe just gifted me and I did the routine in some way, shape or form. So I got through to the next round. I was like, thank goodness. And then I came in for the singing and the acting, and for some reason I didn't hear the knock on the door, and I just slammed the door into the casting director's face. And I just everything. I was like, I've ruined my career. That's it. No one's going to hire me in Australia. And then I got the job, and they said it was the funniest thing because we were looking. And I thought I was told I was up for this really glamazon like dancing plot that was just like like class. But they said, "We weren't looking at you for that because you were too tall. We were actually looking at you to cover the lead comedy role. And your audition was just a comedy scene."
Yeah.
Like unintentionally, I just,
Stick.
accidentally did all these things. But in turn, it booked me a tap show with a lead comedy role, and so sometimes you just have to trust.
Yes.
You never know what they're looking for. Like you think everything's gone down the drain. And sometimes it's worked completely in your favor. So sometimes you just got to be open and trust.
Absolutely. Now we're just about out of time, and I've got one final question that I'd like to ask for both of you. The question is surrounding what advice you would give to aspiring performers. Now you've kind of covered a bit of that already in terms of the processes, but I just want to finish off with one word of advice that might cover things like where for dancers or actors, or maybe even what the process is for that getting an agent as well. What advice do you have around about that for aspiring young performers? James?
And hello. Yeah, I think. Look, if you're at a school or a college, your end of year, your end of school pieces. There's often, every agent in the city comes to watch them, and that it's often sort of like almost a cattle call for agents to see who they'd like. But it's once you're in the industry, you do. It's that thing of with parties and things like that you do hear about, and social events, and also other things within the industry. You do get to know these agents, and agents like singing teachers. What Rachel was saying earlier are so personal. My first agent was an honor to be part of, but I didn't get on with her. It's sort of like, why is everyone else loving this person and I'm not getting on with her? Whereas my second agent, I went, yay, I found someone who, but, singing teachers, same thing. It's a thing of it's a connection. There's got to be an organic connection there that will push you along to agents. If they love you, they'll literally, find your number and call you. But, it also depends on, sometimes their books are full. Sometimes they've got someone on their books that's exactly like you, so they don't want to sort of put that person up for competition. So it's it's sort of it's many different foibles to get there. But once you're in the industry, you do find you are speaking to these people as well.
All right, and Rachel?
Advice on agents. You're covered if you're in a school, but if you're doing it, like me, go onto the MEAA website, which is the union's website, and they have a list of reputable agents in each state, because the last thing you want to do is to be with a shark.
Yes.
And so at least if you're with someone under their banner, that they're worth reaching out to. And do your research. It's not easy. You do your research, you look them all up, and also to really do your research. I'm a detail orientated person, but if they say do not email us, our books are full, I mean, sure, maybe you're that lucky person, but you could actually really upset an agent.
Yeah,
So,
true.
so
Exactly.
listen, read, listen. You might be lucky, or it might say we only accept CDs in the mail. I don't know, but I feel like if you listen and you respond, that's what's going to get a response. I don't know. I appreciate detail. If someone really listens to me and gives me that, I'm like, oh, they're interested in me. They haven't just sent a blanket email.
The biggest warning you can have from an agent is if they want to charge you money, run in the opposite direction. Tony Sheldon taught me wonderfully. He said, just remember, you hire your agent doesn't hire you.
Yeah.
So, and sort of catch-22 situation. But it's that thing of, if you see an agency that says, great, give me $1,000 and we'll do a headshot, run. Don't. It's not. It's a place that's trying to make money rather than an actual agency.
Right.
And then I think just one thing so that's agents, but then just one thing, maybe like advice is really broad, but maybe if I could have told myself one thing when I was younger is to actually trust that I'm good enough. I think the biggest thing is that I was always getting in my way. And honestly, it's only been experiences where I've been thrown on as the lead role or been cast as the lead role or actually seen myself on TV to be like, oh, I'm good. Right? So I think, yeah, like don't be cocky about it or like, like I say that as but the industry's
You've got to have that.
hard enough on you is all I'm saying. And there's going to be a lot of criticism out there, but if you can believe in yourself from a place, not of ego, but of just genuine belief, that'll really serve you. And it's something I wish I had a little. I don't wish it. I don't regret anything on my journey because it's why I can say this to you now. I wouldn't have, if I already knew it when I was a kid, I wouldn't know what to say now. But it's something that I feel like is worth sharing.
Lovely bit of advice. Thank you. Any last words from you, James, in that regards?
If you love it, go and do it. That's my thing too. Kids, I say you've got to love this to the bottom of your toes, because it is a lot of rejection, it is a lot of things, but the rewards are so wonderful. When if you believe that you go to a theatre and you look and say, I can do that on stage, it's a wonderful thing when it does actually happen. But if you're not really into it, then obviously there are other things you can go and do in the community, but I just make it a hobby rather than a big career. But if you love it, just go for it. Absolutely go for it.
Great bit of advice. Well, I would like to thank both of you for your time today and sharing all of your valuable knowledge with us. It's been absolutely wonderful to hear all of your stories and the way that you've worked in the industry. I hope everyone that was watching this today or in the future got something out of that, because there's been a lot that's been shared. So I want to personally thank both of you for attending this session with us today. Adam, is there any final words that you would like to mention before we finish up?
No, well, yes, thank you to everyone for coming. And definitely thank you, Rachel and James. That was, like I said at the start, it's always really interesting to hear stories, and you didn't disappoint today. It was fantastic. Thank you.
Go out there and take over theatre, take over the world.
That's right.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending this part of the session. We're going to take a short break before we begin the workshop that I'll be running with you, the Art of Wakakiri Performance. So I'm going to give you about a 5-minute break to get yourselves ready for that workshop. And if our schools want to say thank you, then please do so in the chat. We had Riverside say, good to see you again, James, from Caloundra for Wakakiri there. So, yeah. All right, everyone. Well, we'll take a short break and I'll see you back in about, let's say, 2:15 to begin the workshop.
Bye.
Bye.